Bonobo apes are among our closest living relatives, and the bonobos here in Africa's Congo basin have a valuable treasure. They know which plants have healing properties. Maybe we can learn from them.
It's always interesting when one specific individual within a group eats something different. That could turn out to be some kind of medicinal plant.
Scientists in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Germany are hopeful the apes have something to teach us.
It would be fantastic if this led us to a natural active substance that we could use. I'd jump for joy.
But will the bonobos share their secrets with us humans? Zoologist Barbara Fruth of the University of Munich is in Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo on her way to the Congo Basin. She's been carrying out research on bonobos and their habitats there for 13 years now.
This is our camp, in this empty spot here. We'll fly straight through about 600 kilometers as the crow flies and land in Ipope. Then we'll walk about 6 kilometers to Lompole. On Sunday or Monday, we'll walk the remaining 20 or 25 kilometers to the camp.
Tropical rainforest as far as the eye can see. It covers more than a third of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
The first thing that always strikes me is the sheer endlessness of the forest beneath us. It's the second largest green lung on Earth. It's wonderful that it still exists. I hope we'll be able to preserve it as long as possible.
The jungle boasts an immense diversity of species. Right in the middle of it lies the scientific camp that Barbara Fruth and her husband set up in 2002. Fruth is now planning to spend 2 weeks here, carrying out research on the bonobo apes and their medicinal plants. The arrival of the German scientist is always a big event for the villagers.
Can someone help me?
Fruth has brought along research equipment and spare parts and supplies for the camp. Every notebook and every pen has to be flown in. The crates weigh a minimum of 25 kilos. "200 people live in the village of Lompole. The villagers benefit from the interest in the bonobo apes. Like Fruth's trusted assistant, Mara Etike, many locals help support the research.
The village lets us use their forest. We've been working here regularly since 2002 and have an agreement. The local residents don't do their hunting or other things in that large section anymore, and we can do our research there.
From cooks to research assistants to transportation helpers, Fruth's project offers many work opportunities for the locals. The villagers do their own hunting outside the area set aside for research. It's time to depart for the camp. Camp manager Antonin Leclerc and several staff accompany Fruth. The route takes them 25 kilometers through what looks like unspoiled nature. But slash and burn farming has already gouged holes into the rainforest. It's hot as an oven here. Once in the forest, though, there's water everywhere. The temperature is a constant 32 degrees Celsius. The slightly cooler air is welcome. After 5 hours, they arrive at the northern edge of the Bonobo research area. 100 square kilometers of unspoiled nature surrounds the Louis Cotal camp. It's home to many medicinal plants about which little is known. This is Barbara Fruth's home for 2 months out of every year. The camp is occupied year-round by an international team of researchers. The first order of business is unpacking the equipment.
The most important things first.
Ça c'est bien, merci.
We don't go into the forest with machetes. They're hard to use, plus the bonobos find them threatening. The bonobos are familiar with poachers, and poachers use machetes. So we use garden shears. When we come across thickets of lianas or haumania, we follow behind the apes and just cut quietly through the plants. The bonobos don't feel threatened, and it's easy for us to follow them. The shears fit into our pockets. Yeah, unfortunately we lose a lot of them.
It's been a long day. Fruth gets set up for the next morning when she'll head out to the bonobos.
I'll put these other things in my pants pockets, or wear them. So this is ready.
The alarm rings at 3 a.m. Fruth and her student want to be at the trees where the bonobos have made their nests when they start to wake.
Okay, abmarschbereit.
To protect the bonobos from disease, the researchers wear face masks. Every day they observe the apes from morning to night. Yesterday's shift used string to mark the path to where the bonobos are nesting.
This is where it ends, so the nests are directly overhead.
50 meters overhead, the apes are waking and relieving themselves. The scientists are pleased. The urine samples will tell them a lot about the apes' overall health. Fruth and her colleagues have spent years getting the bonobos used to their presence. They avoid direct contact to make sure they don't inadvertently affect the apes' behavior and routines. So the scientists have to make do with whatever the bonobos leave for them.
There should be a pile of feces somewhere around here. You can smell it. I definitely smelt it. Here's something. We'll take a closer look at it at camp, right? So this is what I do. And I tie it with a knot, like this.
Now it's time to follow the bonobos. They're constantly on the move, on their search for food. Bonobos are the least studied of the great apes. They're found only in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC. This jungle is the only place they can be observed in the wild. Barbara Fruth is one of the foremost experts on the species. Her research videos have shown that bonobos are peaceful animals. If a conflict does arrive, they often resolve it with sexual activity. It's no wonder they've often been called the hippies of the rainforest. Another interesting fact about the pygmy chimpanzees, as they used to be called, is that the females are dominant in the species. And they also resolve conflicts with each other through sexual activity. But at this time in the morning, the bonobo's only interest is breakfast. With such a diverse variety of plant species here in the rainforest, Fruth has to watch very closely. What are the animals eating, and how much? Are they all eating the same thing? This information could provide clues to the existence of medicinal plants. All of the leftovers from above are gratefully received by the researchers down below.
This is exactly what we want, for them to toss it down. So let's take a closer look. There's one in here. This is what they're eating.
A locust bean plant, which goes by the name of eaka.
Like raw pea.
It's also part of the bonobos' diet. Fruth wants to know as much as possible about what they eat.
This is an example of Zingiberacea, which belongs to the ginger family that we also use as a medicinal plant. The bonobo eat the fruit or pull out the entire stalk, but this isn't what I was looking for. There's a kind of maniophyton plant back there.
Maniophyton fulvum is a liana in the spurge family. It's an important plant in Fruth's research about the bonobos' practices of self-medication.
This is one of those plants. This part feels like sandpaper and gives you these wounds if you brush against it. It has a very hard surface. The underside of the leaf is covered in hair. The bonobo use these two parts, the leaf and the stalk. But they only use shoots from the really long stems. So I'll look for some of them. When they get a leaf, they bite them off, which I won't do now. They're rather prickly. Say this is the bite. Then they fold the leaf into a package right in their mouth. They let the saliva work on that, and then they swallow it without chewing.
Barbara Fruth has documented the bonobos' unusual practice of eating the leaves. But why do they ingest the prickly leaves? Do they cleanse the ape's intestines? Fruth also examines the long shoots the bonobos have left behind.
And here you see an end, exactly the way the bonobos would use it. They're quite high up, so I can take off my mask for a moment. The apes take this here and start to peel it like this. You can see what it looks like. Then they take several of these long strands. Then they put them in their mouth and use their tongue to cover it entirely with saliva. They turn it into a little ball, and then they swallow that ball.
But what purpose does this serve for the apes? Humans in the region use this plant for medicinal purposes. They use the juice of the young leaves to treat wounds and eat them to treat intestinal cramps and diarrhea. Are the bonobos also using the plant as medication? They're swallowing the prickly leaves without chewing them. But why?
In many African countries, all the way to West Africa, people crush these leaves and apply them anally as enemas to treat wounds in the intestinal tract, in the colon. So maybe what the bonobos are doing has a similar purpose. The bonobos don't use enemas, but maybe they're trying to bring something into their intestines that has some kind of wound-healing property.
One problem is that animals in the wild usually try to hide any form of weakness.
You can only detect disease in bonobos once they're really sick. When they have a constant cough or diarrhea, we know they're not feeling well. Otherwise, they tend to look pretty healthy. That's why we also employ other methods to investigate their immune status.
In the camp laboratory, all the samples are systematically catalogued and examined. In the first stages, it's a straightforward process.
So there's no leaf package in here.
But there are a large number of undigested seeds.
This looks normal. It's not too black, not too green, too soft, or too liquid. It doesn't have an unusual odor. It smells like ordinary bonobo poo.
The urine samples they collected earlier in the morning are also carefully documented. But they'll have to be sent to Germany for additional analysis, deep frozen in liquid nitrogen. And finally, there's the Ayaka plant. It's dried and archived. 13 years ago, Fruth began assembling what she calls an inventory of the forest, a unique collection of more than 7,000 plant samples that will help her better understand the bonobos and their behavior. But the pharmaceutical aspect of the research is still in its infancy. Turning a plant into a medication for humans could take decades. To carry out her research, Barbara Fruth has to spend several months each year away from her husband and 4 children. But each day she has with the bonobos provides some compensation for those sacrifices.
It's wonderful to be able to follow them, to not know what's coming next, to just follow in their wake, basically. It's the opposite of the way we normally lead our lives.
And sometimes there are moments of real serendipity, like finding this clearing. The entire bonobo clan has stopped to do some grooming.
It's a special moment. Watching this is a gift, and with this light and being on the same level as the apes, it's wonderful. Bonobos show how little you need to live a good life. Bonobos are endlessly patient. We humans don't have that at all. And bonobos have time. It's good to get away from our hectic daily lives, where we're constantly looking at the clock, spinning our hamster wheels. When you spend a day with the bonobos, you get away from all that.
The patience of the bonobos. This time it pays off. While the rest of the apes groom, one bonobo eats the rind of a rotting tree. That suddenly awakens Barbara Fruth's interest. What is this all about? It's a moment that researchers back in Germany will end up pondering later on. Soon afterwards, the bonobos are back on the move. For Barbara Fruth, it's an opportunity to take a closer look.
I don't know exactly what it is. I'll take along some of what I think the ape might have eaten. It might have been some larvae, of course. We'll see that later. It's always interesting when one specific individual within a group eats something different. If the other animals aren't interested in it, then there's a chance it's a medicinal plant or some kind of medicine. It's when just one animal needs something and the rest don't.
Wherever she looks, there are more clues to help decipher the mystery of the jungle ecosystem. Not too long ago, the scientists ended up with this video clip, captured by a camera on a tree. A bonobo is eating something from a termite mound. Surveillance cameras like these capture scenes that the researchers would otherwise never get the opportunity to see.
Okay.
This is a relatively fresh termite mound. I'll take a few of these cones from the mound with me so that we can see what's in it. No one's looking. I'll take the mask off for a moment. So they take this here and it looks like this. They put it in their mouths and somehow it vanishes. It's sandy and earthy. My dentist will be thrilled. So this is also part of the study. We're also interested in the unusual things the apes eat in small quantities, because that's where we suspect that some sort of medicinal purpose might be involved.
The zoologist will send this sample back to Germany for further analysis. The 70 bonobos that live here have an optimal habitat. That's not the case in the rest of the DRC, where poaching, illegal logging, and slash-and-burn farming threaten the bonobos' habitat. There used to be 100,000 bonobo apes. Today, the Worldwide Fund for Nature estimates that only half remain. In this corner of the forest, though, their numbers are growing.
I wouldn't say that they're safe here, but they are safer than in other places. We've had a constant presence here in this region since 2002, and we accompany the animals on their rounds every day. That's something that meanwhile is acknowledged to be an important protection.
But it's not enough. In the camp, clothing donated by the Cologne Zoo back in Germany is being distributed to an anti-poaching unit. The men come from the National Environmental Agency, the ICCN, and from surrounding villages. They regularly patrol the forest around the research area. Their staple food for the next few days is fufu, a nutritious dish made of cassava flour. Ever since the patrols started their work, Fruth hasn't lost a single bonobo to poaching. The unit seems to be having an impact.
They're going out for 10 days, and they'll take all their food with them. Fufu, tarpaulins, tents, flashlights, GPS. They have forms to fill out when they find something and record how much meat they find. They weigh the meat, what animal it's from, and take pictures. In 10 days, we'll get their report.
Barbara, chef de patrouille. Okay.
The meat might look like this: smoked Red River hog and bonobos. It can be found at markets in the surrounding region as well as in Kinshasa. The unit destroys the poachers' camps and confiscates their illegal meat in hopes of driving them out of the region. It sends a clear signal: commercial hunting is not wanted here.
In the east, near Kahuzi-Biega and places like that, they're shooting at each other. The ICCN units and the poachers are really battling it out, and the guards are risking their lives in the forest. That's not the case here, and we hope it stays that way.
Hoffen auch, dass es so bleibt. Makasi et bonne route, hein, Bayo.
The anti-poaching unit heads out to spend its first night in the bush. Meanwhile, the camp oven is being heated for dinner. Barbara Fruth takes advantage of the quiet moment to examine her pictures.
Heard anything from the patrol?
In one, she finds a bonobo staring at the mouth of a fellow ape. It's a very typical tactic among the apes, usually a way of begging for food. But here there seems to be more going on.
We now suspect that when the animals watch each other closely like this, they're also passing on information. They don't just do this when banal things are happening, but also when something unusual is being eaten. So maybe they're sharing information about medicinal plants.
All this research is hard work. At 7 in the evening, it's time for dinner.
Bon appétit à tous.
Following the bonobos through the forest for kilometers every day takes a lot of energy, and that needs to be replenished.
Everything in Louis Cottard revolves around food, bonobos and food. If you spend 9 months here walking about 20 kilometers a day, you run a constant deficit. Food is hugely important under these conditions.
At around 9 p.m., it's lights out. Everyone's tired after a long day. In the morning, the camp seems almost deserted, apart from a visitor or two. Most of the scientists are in the forest with the bonobos. Maintaining a research camp like this one is an expensive endeavor. The main financing currently comes from the Max Planck Society and the Royal Zoological Society of Antwerp. It's a major project.
Bonobos play a key role in this ecosystem. In a sense, the bonobos are the gardeners of the forest.
Through their feces, the bonobos help distribute the seeds of at least 92 varieties of plants that they consume. They get help from some diligent assistants, beetles. They bring the excreted seeds under the soil, where the seeds can germinate and grow into plants and trees.
I'm interested in the role these dung beetles play in the ecosystem and the diversity of the beetles that feed on the bonobo feces. That's the key to understanding the diversity of this forest system. How does one species help another?
Fruth and her colleagues have been exploring this part of the jungle for more than a decade. But the more they discover, the more questions they have.
I found this recently on the way back to camp. Let me bring it into the light. It was next to the trail. The apes ate it. It's clearly some kind of liana fruit. I can't identify it. So I'll ask in the village if they have a name for it.
That means another 25-kilometer march on foot, accompanied by a local assistant. Outside of their research area, they make a discovery, one they're not happy to see, but part of daily reality here.
It's a live trap.
It doesn't belong to poachers. Locals use these traps to hunt small game for their own consumption.
It's a wire loop trap used to hunt small game, duiker or porcupines, all sorts of things. If a bonobo sticks a hand in it, the loop snaps shut. The bonobo might lose a finger, a hand, or a foot. We've seen all that, bonobos that have been maimed by these traps. Pretend this is a foot, and it's pulled shut. The cable is old, and in this case, the bonobo would try to run away immediately because it's torn. But it keeps getting tighter because bonobos don't understand they need to pull the other side to open it. If a bonobo puts a finger in it, they'll just keep pulling here. The wire gets tighter and tighter until the finger is destroyed.
The cameras often capture images of bonobos whose hands have been maimed in this way. But their next encounter is a happier one. They meet with a plant expert from the village.
Mama. Hey. Merci, Mama. Nakuya.
Rigobert Booto Ipanza knows the forest like the back of his hand. He's been helping Fruth identify plants and explain how locals use them since the project got underway. Even now, Fruth still comes across plants that are unfamiliar to her.
Oui. Oui, ça c'est sao sao.
This is sao sao.
Sao sao sao. Sao sao. Sao sao. Oui, c'est sao sao.
Sao sao, isn't that a bit like a boel? But this is different, right? Let's take a look. Oh, I see. It just has one seed. You're right.
Yes, it's sao sao.
Let's do the next one. When I find something I haven't seen before, it's a special occasion.
That's loma loma fruit.
Loma loma.
A liana.
And this is the seed.
Nowadays, only a few villagers have this expertise. The local population increasingly relies on Western medicine. That's why Barbara Fruth and Rigobert Booto Ipanza want to preserve the knowledge of the healing powers of the jungle.
When someone's sick, I help him. I have to help cure people. You can't keep this knowledge to yourself. This knowledge is for everyone.
They have just a few more hours, then it's time for Fruth to say goodbye. She's going back to Germany, with a stop in the capital Kinshasa along the way. Returning from the bush to a city of 10 million always takes a bit of getting used to. Fruth is on her way to her office, where she'll meet with Nono Bonjengo Ikombe, her liaison to the local environmental authority. She has alarming news about the region surrounding the forest.
We spent the night from Sunday to Monday in Lompole. At 2:30 in the morning, Mango suddenly arrived and woke everybody and told us that a poacher had threatened him with an AK-47. He fled. He said the poachers there are incredible. They're all hunting elephants. It's a very serious situation and they're planning to call the military.
The unit in Monkoto?
Yes, that one.
Can the military make a difference? Fruth's patrols are already confiscating traps by the sackful.
This is from at least one poaching patrol who have collected wires from the area surrounding our study region. These poachers are professionals. They lay 1,000 wires at a time and figure that that will get them enough meat.
As soon as they make their way into a region, they start hunting. The traps are left there for up to a month. They bring the meat to market centers, even all the way here to Kinshasa.
Barbara Fruth will keep following what happens with the poachers from back home in Germany. She'll store the plants she collected in this office until they can be ready for export. Fruth has already brought many samples of plants back to Germany that she gathered on previous expeditions. One of her herbariums is maintained by Hans-Joachim Esser at the State Botanical Collection in Munich. The collection contains 3 million dried and pressed plant samples from around the world, all stored with the greatest care. About 1,300 of the samples come from Barbara Fruth. This is one of the world's largest plant collections. The curator is delighted to have so many samples from the largely unexplored Congo Basin region.
We get more German flora from the alpine region, but not as much from tropical regions, so it's quite unusual for us.
If you consider how quickly the rainforests are vanishing, more quickly than you can imagine, these samples are basically irreplaceable.
When Barbara Fruth knows only the local name of a plant, she draws upon the expertise of Hans-Joachim Esser. But with the Loma Loma plant, he's met his match.
I found a liana on one of my walks, but I can't classify it. It had these seed heads.
Looks like Ananaceae.
Just one seed and very tasty.
Tasty?
Even though they can't figure out the scientific classification, Essa still has something very special to show Barbara Fruth. This file of medicinal plants demonstrates how challenging it is to obtain approval for new drugs in Western countries.
This was a U.S. company from California who tried to investigate medicinal plants in a fair way. They traveled to the sites, spoke with shamans, even signed contracts with them. This herbarium took 10 years, and it's a trove of information. Then they went bankrupt because the U.S. authorities require so much documentation.
That's interesting. We had the same problem.
That was the last time that such a large company tried to investigate medicinal plants in the jungle in a fair way. This herbarium by Shaman Pharmaceuticals ended up with Bayer, and they gave us the entire herbarium. It's really special.
Ja, das stimmt.
Will the researchers one day succeed in making use of the wisdom of the apes to produce drugs that will help humans? 2 years ago, Fruth was turned down by one company. The approval procedures are too complicated and expensive, they said. Now Fruth is giving it another try. She's meeting with 2 scientists from the Technical University of Braunschweig, who also study medicinal plants.
Hallo, schön, Sie zu sehen.
Hallo, Frau Fruth.
Grüß Sie.
Hallo.
What have you brought us?
I have an entire bag, partly full of samples that were imported quite some time ago, and then 2 relatively recent items. Can I empty this out here, on your snow-white laboratory bench?
Perhaps this will be the key to decoding the secrets of the bonobos. Professor Dietrich Mebs has brought pharmaceutical expert Rainer Lindigkeit on board. Will their work one day help treat diseases in humans? They're still a long way from making that a reality, but Mebs is optimistic.
Many of the pharmaceuticals we use every day originated in nature. One day I came across Barbara Fruth's work and thought, this is great. These apes are our nearest relatives, essentially. Maybe we can benefit from this. And what are they doing with these plants? That's how our collaboration started.
Both the toxicologist and the medicinal plant expert are impressed. It's not every day they get a chance to see what apes can teach us.
This is almost exceptional. So much of it is unusual. There's 4 or 5 cones here.
But only one's doing it.
Exactly, that's how it works. They put an entire cone in their mouth.
Is it moist?
No, totally dry. It's like dry earth, basically.
The prickly Maniophyton plant is also scrutinized. Mebs put some leaves under a scanning electron microscope. At first glance, it looks like it's just a scrubber for the stomach. But lab tests carried out years ago show that the leaves have an anti-inflammatory effect.
I do wonder if it's some kind of intestinal pill. Maybe they eat it like that so the substances pass into the intestinal tract before they're digested by the stomach acids. Maybe the reason they don't chew is so that it releases its substances inside the intestine.
What we've seen over the past decades on the phyto market, the market for plant-based pharmaceuticals, is that there haven't been any major innovations. There haven't been any new extracts of natural substances that have attracted huge attention as pharmaceutical agents. And what we have here is an entirely new spectrum. These are samples we'd never see or obtain otherwise.
These treasures from the jungle will now be examined in the laboratory. The first sample is the rind that the one ape ate in the clearing.
And here it is.
That's good. We can definitely carry out another analysis. I'll use some liquid nitrogen.
The rind is first flash frozen and then pulverized. The extract is examined using gas chromatography. This is where the various substances in the rind are separated. Then a mass spectrometer identifies the individual substances. It's a painstaking process, but eventually it will tell the researchers exactly what the bonobo apes have in their medicine chest.
If we find something, a plant extract or a natural substance that seems like it has a proven effect, something we could build on, that would be great. That would be wonderful. I'd jump for joy if that happened. That would be a dream come true.
Also dann würde ich Purzelbäume schlagen, weil das wäre so mein Traum.
Discovering the secrets of the bonobo apes. That dream could come true in this laboratory. But Barbara Fruth never loses sight of her real goal.
First and foremost, I'm a zoologist, a behavioral ecologist. For me, the animals and the plants and the interaction of the two, that's what matters. That's my main interest, what fascinates me. If my overall goal turns into something specific, something where scientists can investigate how a substance from plant X interacts with animal Y, that would be wonderful. But my concern is the big picture. You're interested in the details, and even the truly tiny details that could encompass the entire spectrum. If this should happen to turn into something that's relevant to us humans, which encourages the preservation of 800,000 square kilometres of Congolese rainforest, wonderful. I'm all for it.
Barbara Fruth will soon return to the Democratic Republic of Congo. One day, perhaps the bonobo apes will help scientists add new medications to our pharmacy. But for that to happen, the bonobos and their habitat need to be preserved and protected.